Hey class, we are now on Module 6 and talking about Gestalt therapy. I've got a good number of different resources for you in this module, in addition to some videos, which I hope you enjoy. I most certainly could not leave you without watching Fritz Perls in action with Gloria, another classic counseling related educational film. So I will say that kind of looking back in the past couple of weeks, I think I would probably have restructured the way that we were going through these last two modules and the upcoming module a little bit differently, because Gestalt is such an existentially based therapeutic approach. I think it probably would have fit better to talk about it right after we talked about existential theory, and because motivational interviewing came from person-centered theory, I think it probably would have made more sense to put those two together. So we're just going to kind of hop around for a little bit. Just, bear with me with that. But moving on, moving into Gestalt, and I think if we're thinking about the almost polar opposite maybe of Carl Rogers, we would have Fritz Perls, right? And so we have like the guy that's anti-confrontation, fully engaged and showing empathy and unconditional positive regard and not giving any direction and not being confrontational. I think I said that already with Carl Rogers. And then we've got Fritz Perls. Now, modern day contemporary Gestalt theory and therapy doesn't put as much of an emphasis in the same way on confrontation and resistance, but it's still, I think, a focus of this theoretical orientation. I also do want to say that for those that are interested in Gestalt therapy, if you ever see yourself practicing Gestalt theoretical approaches later on as a clinician, there is additional training that you would need to seek out. And there's institutes all around the country as well. So, especially with this theoretical orientation, I think it could be more difficult to find practitioners out there that are intently and focused on using Gestalt therapy, or that have received additional training in this therapeutic approach. Especially when you compare it to like people that are using CBT and cognitive therapies, behavioral therapies, solution focused, brief therapies, things of that nature. So it can be a little bit difficult to find somebody that's could work with you if you're interested in pursuing this theoretical orientation down the road. So there are additional trainings you can seek out. And I would encourage anybody to look into those if you're interested in this particular orientation, which is really interesting, I think. Not my personal cup of tea. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but I do like certain foundational aspects of it. In Gestalt, and with it being such an existential and phenomenological approach, big word there. We hear that phenomenological approaches in research a lot, but we're talking about awareness, just as we would with existential therapy, right? We're talking about a person, a client, the main goal being for that client to develop a better awareness of what they're experiencing in the present, in the here and now. And so this is yet another theoretical approach that's really focused on now and now being right now, and that now concept kind of changing, right? So with Gestalt, the ultimate goal is to help the client find awareness, find some understanding in who they are within the here and now, in hopes that that individual will move toward seeing themselves as a whole. And what Gestalt translates to is the whole. So there are lots of different ways that happens, though, and that occurs. And there are a lot of good techniques within Gestalt therapy that I think can be transferred into different theoretical approaches, depending on which one you're looking at. But again, when we're looking at any theoretical approach that looks at the here and now, that's a lot of the ones that are kind of this postmodern theories of choice, or theories that people integrate. We're not looking at the past. We're not digging deep into somebody's unconscious or subconscious. So we're really focusing on the what and the how and not the why. which I think sometimes for novice counselors that can be a little bit tricky, to not be asking those kind of why questions, because that's kind of our curious nature of inquiry, to ask those why questions. And technically that's an open-ended question, right? Asking somebody why. But within Gestalt, we're just really focusing on the what and the how of the experience. I feel like with Gestalt, with Gestalt therapists, they have to be so innately present and focused on nonverbal behaviors and on the most subtle changes in a client as they're working with that client, because those are the things that therapist, that counselor will pick up on, and then start to integrate some of those techniques that will heighten that client's awareness, whether it be a different movement that they're making, a shaking of the leg, laughing when they're talking about something serious, or, making a joke about themselves, deflecting, kind of putting up some of those defense mechanisms, all those little things, using metaphors, all of those little nuances that happen within a counseling session that a client may be expressing when they're expressing a feeling, or they're just kind of giving some information about themselves. Those are those little things that a Gestalt theorist will pick up on and then hone in on it, even more so, and exaggerate it to a certain degree. If somebody is using, instead of saying I, or if they're saying you a lot and deflecting, picking up on those little subtle changes in how somebody is expressing feelings through language, and then having the client repeat again and again I statements, for example. So, I think it requires the counselor to be really on, turned on all the time. Not that we shouldn't be turned on all the time, but I think it certainly heightens that. And it takes practice to do that. And I think that's, again, kind of that underscores what I said before about getting additional training, is that you don't just jump into counseling and say, well, I'm practicing Gestalt, and that is what it is. I forget where I was going with this, but it actually, so Gestalt theory translates pretty nicely into individual work, obviously, into group theory techniques. You can do a lot of the experimentation. You can have group members kind of interacting and engaging with each other in group theory as well. So that is nice, because not all theoretical orientations translate nicely into group counseling sessions and group counseling environments. And there are some strengths from a diversity perspective, that you can tailor techniques to fit an individual's needs. And I think if we're thinking about diverse cultures, collectivist societies, and to a certain degree, indigenous people, kind of having that awareness of the here and now, it does, I think there's a nice translation to some cultures that exist out there that you might be working with. With that being said, it's, again, not for everybody. And I think, when you watch the videos, the role plays, and how, Dr. Pearls is, very good, obviously, at what he does. But, I think there's a certain client population that Gestalt might work better with than others. So keep an open mind as you view the videos, and I want to hear some, did I ask a question? I did ask a question in the discussion board, because I wanted to get your thoughts on the videos. So I hope you find them interesting. Think about some of those techniques. I'd say the go-to is the empty chair. Everybody talks about the empty chair technique, but again, I think picking up on some of those little nuances and how a client is describing themselves or describing a situation, or if a client's fixated on one part of the story and digging deeper into that and really eliciting somebody's emotions and what they're feeling in the moment and bringing them into the present. I think all of that can be really applicable to a lot of different theoretical orientations. So with that, I will leave you guys to the rest of the content for the module, and I'll jump back in at the discussion board.